Hey everyone, today we got a pretty interesting video. So for anyone who is old enough to remember, back in my day, when, like gas was like 50 cents a gallon and you had to walk 10 miles to school in the snow and fight dinosaurs or whatever. We actually used to run Toma Fiendal in Dash, and you just ran it in your main board because you didn't care. So this is going to be a take on an old deck that anyone who joined the game, probably anytime after like Everfest, Uprising era, probably didn't really experience it. During that time, right, when Hybrid Dash became like the norm. There's probably a lot of people who have joined after that, where Hybrid Dash is the first introduction to Dash they've had, and they know about like the control, like Tree Frog, whatever you want to call it list. Like the full control D-React package, you basically play like a Guardian, but you have like your end game with your pistol. And specifically for Hybrid Dash, right, the whole point of that was you had a 60 mech main board, so you would just boost in every matchup with Tekla Pounder. You didn't have any misses in your deck, and then your sideboard had generics, but it's when you would bring the pistol items. The pretty interesting thing is that, at least when I was playing the game, when I first got into Dash, when I first built Dash, the perspective on it was a lot different. A lot of this was because we literally didn't have Tekla Pounder, so there was no option really to have a fully aggressive deck. It just wasn't very feasible. We were missing some pretty important cards from the mech pool, and the game was like arguably a little bit slower. So what's pretty interesting is that you would actually run basically staple generics in your main board, and you would play like a mid-range game plan where you really wouldn't boost a whole lot. You would just go like pistol, induction chamber, throttle. You would play like a 2-cost pistol, induction chamber, CNC, and then every once in a while you would keep 2 cards to set up a pistol item. And it was actually pretty difficult and pretty intricate, because what you would do is you would actually pretty much every single game try to set up a pistol plan plus high octane combo. The game plan was you would play as efficiently as possible, you block super efficiently, you only play efficient attacks, establish like, a purifier, pass turn, and then you would get 2 purifiers out, and then you would go for like a high octane play. So try to get, like 3 to 4 pistol shots in. But with the purifiers, right, each of those pistol shots come in for 4, and then you would try to arsenal Toma Fiendal for your high octane turn. And then even more importantly, you would pitch all of your mech cards, you wouldn't pitch any generics or anything like that. So in your second cycle, you can start boosting when you need to. It was really difficult, pretty intricate, very interesting to play. I want to kind of rediscover it, see if there's anything there. So why would you want to play a list like this? I think the main reason why you would want to play this is its value lines are like just better pretty much than aggro boost dash. You have a very reliable game plan, really powerful turns, right, in your mid game. Like your mid game pivot with this deck is crazy, right? Like if you have set up purifiers, you have counters on them, you have Tome and Arsenal, and you get 1 5-card hand that works, you just blast through your opponent. It's pretty nuts, right? And with Tome, like you're drawing so many cards, you can use Induction Chamber as well. So your like pivot game plan is insane, right? So the reason why this doesn't work is if the meta is too aggressive. If we look at the top 8, like there are some aggressive decks, so Fi is a problem for sure, right? So that would be a mark against this. If the meta starts to slow down, I actually like this deck a lot. It's nice too because you're not making the same concessions that like Tree Frog Dash is. Like, yeah, like Fi is not fantastic, but the thing is that actually like your value lines are pretty good into it that you can probably still play like normal. And I think this deck would have a much better time into something like Fi or Katsu than Control Dash. I think Control Dash would have a tough time into go wide aggro decks that this deck doesn't have the same problem with. The trade-off is that it's still very favored into control decks, but obviously you just don't have like the guaranteed, like almost buy that Tree Frog Dash does into something, like Bravo, for instance. Like I think Tree Frog Dash and a Bravo is like as unfavored as you can probably get. So let's actually run through it. So there's a few interesting upgrades compared to like when I was playing, and I had to build a list like this. BIOS update is pretty interesting because the main consideration for not boosting in the first cycle on top of hitting generics was if you boosted a pistol item, you pretty much lost your game plan. Like if your game plan is, to go like a couple purifiers, high octane pivot, close out the game, and you boost a purifier, you've lost a lot of your output, right? Now like boosting 1 is like pretty bad. Boosting 2, you've thrown everything off the rails. So BIOS update fixes that problem, and actually at the top end actually is insane, right? Because then it becomes a 0 for 3 Regoic, and it actually cheats your pistol item into the field, so you no longer have to keep 2 cards to play it. It's no longer something you have to keep. have it be a non-block in your hand. So absolutely fantastic when it works properly. The strike against this card is running more non-boost cards means that your high octanes are a little bit hard to consistently get out when you see them. The way this deck works is basically like once you see high octane and you have Tome in your arsenal, you're going for it. And so having, like a BIOS update in that hand means that's one less action point you're getting. So that sucks, right? So this could be red T-Bone. So it's not entirely solved yet. We would have to run it through a bunch of matches and testing, see how we feel. We're running CNC, right? So like I said, the point of this is that we're a mid-range deck. We're fine not boosting. We're fine just blocking 6, trading 8. If you're going to trade 8 with 2 cards, you might as well do with Command and Conquer, right? So you actually have an on-hit that they care about. That's pretty important. It would be better if we were still on Goliath Gauntlet in the deck. So, there's a trade-off there. If you really wanted to, you could run Goliath Gauntlet, but with less Ranger decks in the meta now, I'm not super concerned about really needing to push that breakpoint on it. Like I said, high octane. It's the whole point to play the deck. You're going to have a mid-game pivot where you're going to try to establish 2 purifiers. You're starting with an induction chamber on the field already, and then you're just going to go off from there. Some very, staple boost cards, right? We have Pulse Wave Harpoon, Throttle. Throttle lets you do a 2 for 8 super easily. We're running, of course, 0 to 60s and zipper hits. We're running the yellow zippers for now just because they are 1 for 4, so pretty good, right? You could maybe run one of the red ones from Bright Lights, but I don't know what effect is better than having a yellow pitch, especially when you do have pistol items and you do have things you need to pay for. You do have 2 costs in the deck, right? Like if you draw, CNC and 3 other reds, and one of those reds is like Fender Bender or whatever, you're going to be sad when it could just be zipper hit. So I don't see a big enough reason to be running those. Like maybe you could run the opt one if you wanted. That one's like not terrible, especially if you're trying to filter a little bit or find the items, try to keep yourself from boosting items or keep yourself from boosting generics. Like maybe that one's okay. Maybe you could take the slot somewhere else and you could still run yellow zipper hit. I don't really know, right? This is like version 1. Spark of Genius, where would we be without it? Let's say you have a crazy pivot after an aggro turn, playing it for 0, getting a Tekla Core, so 4 resources off of 1 card plus a card draw. You can also, of course, use it to go find, your items on turn 1, or whenever you just have extra cards and you need to go find them, or in a slower matchup. Thomas here is a 2 left. You could even argue maybe you should only run 1. The thing is, like, you only want to play like 1 a game, maybe 2. Like, the biggest thing is you just want that pivot turn off the high octane and you want the tome. That's it. After that, there's not really much use in having the card. Sure, like, if you draw both of them, you can Achilles the second one if you want, if you don't have a high octane. But the problem is that your Achilles is kind of there to be a little bit of a safeguard against this deck having more generics. Obviously, we hope that it doesn't come to that, and Achilles is just either a way to slam down your second tome or to push an extra pistol shot, hopefully for 4. But, I think 3 would be way too much. Like Dash.io, that's fine, right? Because you have the ability to get action points naturally every single turn. You have a way to get 2 action points or to replenish your action point. You can't really do it in this deck, right? So I don't exactly think 3 tomes would be the way. Even 3 tomes in an IO feels like a bit much. And it is a 2 block. That's very relevant. Steel Soul Controller is a slight upgrade, to the playstyle of the deck. So if you're ever given extra cards on a turn, or if you just want a nice, early value line, right? You can like load something and then pitch another blue, right? So you can load 2 items, pitch a second blue and play it, so you're not resource inefficient. And then if, you block, let's say you use up all of it, you don't play a second one on top of it, right? So you block for 3, you block for 2, and you block for 1. You're actually up on value, unless if I'm like misunderstanding this, right? Because you would use 2 cards for 6 value, but you also get 2 resources out of those 2 cards as well. So if you want to, factor that into whatever calculation you want, right? At the very least, it's like 2 extra damage on it. And the value of being able to selectively block when you need to and blocking multiple breakpoints is super effective, right? So I see a lot of value in running this card now. Our other blue slots, they're really just kind of thrown in there. They can be whatever you want them to be. Like if you want these to be cheaper boost cards, you can absolutely go for it, right? It would give you easier access to high octane lines. So, reasonably, like this could be something like Data Link. I already feel the comments coming, so we'll just do this right now in real time. All right, there we go. We fixed it, right? So now your max Cs are much easier to play. So going to the rest of the sideboard here, we have a second induction chamber if you're playing into an even slower matchup. If you feel that you even want to go even harder on this game plan, if you're taking for even more control decks, Bravos, whatever, you know, go up to 3 induction chambers if you want, or 3 purifiers, your prerogative. Everything else here, mostly a mix of some more aggressive tech along with some more defensive tech, right? So when you're bringing in 8 cards regardless, right, you're probably going to be bringing in Fates and Sinks in most matchups, right? If you're playing against, you know, like a Ninja or something like that, right, you're probably going to want to bring these into something like Guardian, Azalea, you know, you're going to bring in Movable, right? So this all kind of makes sense. A Firewall is just another, you know, 4 blocks. So if you're in a matchup where there's a lot of breakpoints, so specifically something like Ninja, right? If you're playing against something like Warrior and you want better blocking potential, if you want higher numbers on your block cards for when you need to, you know, defend against something specific, right? I mean, this is also like a non-attack, so into Bolton, right? This will let you block a 0 for 4, you know, attack from Bolton, which is relevant, right? Because they have things like, the courage tokens or whatever. So if they go like courage, bolts of courage, right, for 4 that naturally has go again, you have a non-attack response to that card. So we can go down the line regardless, you know, why not increase the value of your turn cycles, right? You don't care that Firewall is not an attacking card because you're not a deck that only attacks, right? You're a deck that is mixing blocking with aggression. You know, at the very least, your floor is you probably block 9, hopefully higher, right? That's the point. That's the point of these, right? So if you have a Firewall or a Sink in your hand, you know, you're blocking 10, maybe more. And then on your turn, like you use a balloon, you attack for 4 with your pistol, right? So that's like a more control approach, like where you really block out. But if the line presents itself, maybe it's better to block 6, swing 8. Maybe it's better to block 3, swing even more. So, you know, like you block 4 with a D-React, and then you send, you know, I don't know, a 3-card, who knows, like a 12 or something like that. 3-card 12 is like not bad, right? This deck is gonna be hard to play, right? This is probably like the hardest version of Dash that would probably exist because you have to manage what are good trading numbers with my opponent? What is my overall game plan? How close am I to enacting my game plan? When does my pivot happen in the game? Do I need to pivot now? Do I need to pivot earlier? Sometimes you just gotta go before you see the Tome of Fiendal. There's a lot of intricacies here, right? This is not a very easy deck to play. You're gonna also have to learn how to pitch that. I mean, that one's easy, right? You just only pitch mech cards, so that one's not the craziest thing out there. But the fact that you do have to manage like a second cycle that doesn't have mech cards in it so you can boost freely now is like pretty important, right? So this is much different than Control Dash, where you block out with everything, play your pistol items, you know, close your eyes and block with 4 cards every turn, or, you know, just like swing pistol back at them. It's a lot different than, you know, like Boost Dash, where you just throw everything at your opponent. When you have to bring generics and boost cards in every matchup, it fundamentally changes everything, right? When you're running pistol items pretty much into every single matchup, that changes everything, right? So pretty intricate deck, pretty difficult to play. Like when I got in the game, Dash was so hard. Like, I ended up having way more success with Rhinar when I started the game because Rhinar was just like easier to figure out, right? You kind of played the same, but it's like, oh, I just Blood Rush Bellow kill them, but there was no other, you know, like steps along the way. Whereas this is the same thing. It's like the same thing as playing mid-range, you know, Rhinar or whatever, where like you are kind of blocking, attacking your opponent in the early game, and then you have the mid-game pivot where you go, okay, no blocks, 5 cards, here's Blood Rush for, you know, 20 plus, 30, whatever. And then you try to close out the game from there. This is the same deal. It's like you block, send some damage, ship them down. But the difference is that you're also managing a pitch stack for second cycle. You're managing pistol items. You're trying to set up for a combo explosive mid-game turn that's a little bit harder to do than Blood Rush, because Blood Rush, you just play the card and you go. Whereas this deck, you know, you're trying to micromanage having, you know, Tome of Fiendal, High Octane, your Purifiers. But, I mean, the overall end game is something quite powerful, right? Going the rest here, we just have, you know, I mean, Max Velocity and Payload can be for more aggressive matchups, but mostly here for Dromai, right? These are just poppers for Dromai. Sigil is a really good card. I would probably run it into most matchups, I would imagine. It's hard to find matchups where it's like not relevant. I think quite a good card, especially in a list like this. And, you know, we got AB2, right? So threw in some things for a maybe board, right? If you want better tech into Rune Blades, if for some reason Rune Blades ever become a thing again, you could run this, for example, right? So, although Thorn's gone, so probably not. So this is just Kano tech. So, yeah, whatever, do what you want. Spring of Lake I threw in here as well. Dash IO did not overperform, I think, at Worlds. Someone can pull stats if that's wrong, but I made this a week ago when people were on the cusp of trying to figure out what's going on with Dash IO, if she's good or not. If you really wanted to make sure your local -io does not get to play a game of Flesh and Blood with you, you know, you can throw a race face in your sideboard, right? So you have a 2 for 6, the same deal as like a, you know, you go pistol, go again, 2 for 6. That's insane, right? Because they literally can't play the game. You can also go humble if you really wanted to. Not the most incredible thing, right? But being able to turn off their hero power on their turn means that they can't, you know, play an item off the top, which if that's like their way of playing their tome for the turn, that's pretty huge. If you're worried about Azalea or something like that, you can run Warmongers, right? It would stop your Induction Chamber and your Purifiers to the turn, but, you know, you can play anything else, right? So if your turn is just Warmongers and then your turn you boost an attack with a pistol, like that's perfectly fine, right? So if you really wanted to, you know, you can throw Warmongers in your maybe board as well. And I mean, you can go down the list, right? That's the whole point of this, right? The core shell is here. You have items, you have High Octane, you got Tome, right? And you got boost cards. That's it, right? Everything else, up to you, your discretion. If there are certain tech cards you like for meta, so if your meta is like Katsu's and I think Amnesia works with the Heralds with New Prism. I don't know, dude. I played against that hero like twice. So if you want Amnesia, you can play Amnesia. So the world is yours with this deck, right? You are just looking for the best generic answers that you can put in here to flesh out the rest of the list. Which is the fun part about a list like this, right? Is the fact that you do get to just go find generic answers to things rather than just like relying on the mech card pool and just hoping that your numbers are like better than your opponents. You actually get to go find specific things. So rather than just being like, well, I got to play against this, you know, other aggro deck that's playing Snatch or whatever. I'm just got to hope that, you know, they don't draw more Snatches than I have armor blocks, right? Or more breakpoints before I run out of armor, right? Or I hope that my numbers are just better so I can just like wipe them and win the aggro race. Whereas in this one, you get more agency, right? Because you can run D-Reacts in your main board against them while still being proactive and attacking them. You can run CNC, all, you know, all this kind of stuff, right? So that's the list. We can tweak it. Maybe I can even get some gameplay in the channel if I want to, if I feel like playing Talishar. Probably don't. Playing Talishar kind of sucks, and it steals my enjoyment of the game quite considerably. But if that feels important to people, because like I said, this is from back in my era, so maybe no one even knows how to play a list like this. So if you need to see that for yourself, just let me know, and I can try to muster up the courage to play some online games. But until next time, thank you for watching.